Good morning, and thank you for coming to our press conference with the Winnick family and the Riverside Police Department for this awful series of events that have occurred. I'd first like to call up Michelle Blandon. Michelle it was her parents and her sister who were murdered. She's going to come up here and read a statement, but she's not going to take any questions. Michelle?
Good morning, and thank you for everyone for being here today. My family and I truly appreciate the love and the compassion that we have received thus far in this trying time. To our neighbors, our friends, and our family members, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the outpouring of well wishes. We have heard all of you, and we appreciate you more than you will ever know. Nobody could imagine this crime happening to my family, to our family, especially it just being one day after Thanksgiving. It was just a few days ago that we all celebrated together that Thanksgiving of blessing and gratefulness. And we recounted many of those blessings that we had in our lives together on that day. We had a family debate, and it got heated, on if the brownies my mom made should be frosted with sprinkles or just left plain. It seemed silly at the time, but that's a conversation and a debate that will forever resonate in my heart. Little did I know on that day that would be the last time that my husband and I would see my parents and my sister again. The next day, while we were out buying Christmas lights for our home, I received a phone call from my parents' neighbor of 22 years. They were best friends. They looked out for each other. She called to tell us that we needed to get there as soon as we could because my parents' house was on fire. This is the home that my sister and I grew up in since we were little. I couldn't get there fast enough. We left everything in the shopping cart at the store and took off. When I had arrived at my house, we had learned that something more tragic had happened. In a time where communities are afraid to report strange sightings, the loving neighbors on my parents' street saw an unfamiliar car, and they immediately reported it to authorities. Ultimately, this is our community, and we need to look out and care for one another. Making that call from that neighbor saved my niece's life. And that neighbor is a hero in our eyes. If something like this horrific tragedy can happen here in our neighborhood, in our community, it can happen anywhere. Sadly, we were too late to save my dad, Mark, my mom, Sherry, and my youngest sister, Brooke, from that vicious crime. They are forever in my heart, and I miss them deeply. In this tragic moment of our family, our grief, we hope some good will come from this. Parents, please know your child's online activity. Ask questions about what they are doing and whom they are talking to. Anybody can say they're someone else, and you could be in this situation, which I do not want for the world. This horrific event started with an inappropriate online romance between a predator and a child. We have some solace that this person will never harm anyone again, especially a minor. But we also want to make it very clear that we do not applaud his death. This was an adult that traveled across the country to kidnap a 15-year-old girl, my niece, our family member, with the idea to kidnap her and kill and devastate our family. He took an oath to protect, and yet he failed to do so. Instead, he preyed on the most vulnerable. When you hear the term catfishing, you think of a long-running dating show or series about a national sports figure, both glamorizing and sensationalizing online relationships. However, in this instance, catfishing led to the deaths of the three most important people in my life: my dad, my mom, and my sister. Please, parents, guardians, when you are talking to your children about the dangers of their online actions, please use us as a reference. Tell our story to help your parenting, not out of fear, but out of example of something that did happen. My sister Brooke was a loving single mom who did her best to raise her two teenage daughters in a loving way. She supported them in their school endeavors and enjoyed watching color guard performances and choir concerts for both of her children. My sister was an avid collector of the famous Starbucks tumblers. Every release day, I would get a text at 4 a.m. from her, wondering why I wasn't waiting in line with her to pick up the newest release. My dad, Mark, the silly old man that I always referenced him to be, was a soft-spoken and humble man who would go out of his way to help a friend or stranger in need. He was known on their street as the one to depend on if anyone needed anything. In 1993, his love for coaching high school athletes began at La Sierra High School, where I had the privilege and the honor of not only calling him dad, but also coach, as he coached all 4 years of my soccer team. He continued coaching high school sports at many schools in Riverside County and ultimately found his home at Arlington High School, coaching the softball and the baseball teams. He was a man with a big and caring heart who unselfishly gave to his student athletes. My mom, Sherry, the matriarch of our family, with the biggest giving heart imaginable, did anything and everything for everyone and never needed or wanted anything in return. She loved my sister and I, along with her 4 granddaughters, with every ounce of her being. She enjoyed baking with us, and the highlight of the year was baking and decorating Christmas cookies. And that is a tradition that I will carry on as we go forward. My mom always said that God puts people into your life for a reason. And in this time of tragedy, he has done just that. He has brought so many great people into our lives and to help us navigate through this terrible ordeal. We are so amazed and overwhelmed and grateful for the amount of affection and support from friends and strangers. Without this assistance, we would be lost. My husband and I are very grateful to everyone who has reached out. We are just ordinary people living with an extraordinary circumstance. There are no words for the gratitude we feel for the outpouring of support that we have received, and I know that we will continue to receive. For my 2 young nieces who are now left motherless, we hope that this community can wrap your arms around them and lift them up. They have the most difficult journey ahead, as they are minors and they don't understand everything that has happened. We hope and we ask that this community continue to shelter them, protect them, and wrap them in their arms and continue to lift them up. Please positively support them. We have started a GoFundMe page in honor of my parents and my sister, Winnick Family Fund, in which it will be used to help my nieces, my sister's 2 children, live their best life and start a college savings. Thank you to those that have already donated and to those that will. We are eternally grateful. Thank you for giving up your time this morning to be here and to support us and honor the lives of my mom, my dad, and my sister. They lived and loved selflessly. And in the words of my favorite New Kids on the Block boy bander, Donnie Wahlberg, spread love, and love will spread. Thank you.
I'd now like to bring up Allison Soros, a close friend and advocate for the family, to make a few comments.
Good morning, everyone. The number of you here is a testament to those parents, those teachers, law enforcement that are all concerned about what transpired that gave rise to this press conference today. My name is Allison Soros, and as I was introduced, I'm here as a friend, a longtime family friend of the Winnick family. I'm here as a parent, and I'm also here not as their attorney, but I am an attorney. And I'm here because I spent over 15 years as an LA County Deputy District Attorney before leaving the DA's office to kind of shift gears and pursue working with teenagers in the mental health space. I became a licensed counselor, and I worked as a school counselor in the schools for several years before leaving and going into private practice, where I focus on young adults and teens and mental health and criminal cases that involve mental health related issues. And so when this happened, I jumped in to just help negotiate the system. I'm here voluntarily to just do what I can, as all of you are, to help get this family through this horrible, horrific situation. To get here, it took a lot of work on behalf, as all of you know. Not only has the Riverside Police Department gone out of their way, the compassion, the expertise, the dedication that every single member of law enforcement and this agency has shown is unparalleled. And that's coming from someone who has worked with law enforcement agencies for years. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and the California Highway Patrol are to thank for what transpired here. The Riverside Fire Department, the San Bernardino County Fire Department are here and need to be thanked for what, for their involvement today. And the other agency that I believe is here today is the Riverside District Attorney's Office. And as a former Deputy District Attorney, victims of crime is one area that really is emphasized and needs to be addressed from a global perspective. In this situation, the Riverside DA's office did something that you don't really see very often. When there is a crime and it gets referred to the DA for a filing because someone is prosecuted, the District Attorney's Office Victims of Crime steps in order to provide support and resources for those victims of crime. But when there is not a filing, oftentimes it gets missed because law enforcement is not the one handling the victims of crime. And so you have someone who commits a crime, let's say a murder-suicide, and now there's no one to prosecute. Oftentimes we have victims that are left without support or just knowing where to go for support, not because of any malintent, just because of a difference in agencies handling that. I have a client who was the victim of a home invasion robbery when he was in his early 20s, and he was pistol whipped and left for dead and transported to the hospital where he remained in a coma for several months. Afterwards, as you can imagine, he suffered physical issues, but also mental health issues that led him into my office as a client. When he came to me, I asked him if he had received services and help, and he said, no, they never apprehended a suspect. So no one helped him get the support he needed as a victim. Riverside DA's office in this particular case took it upon themselves to independently reach out to Shelley in this case to offer services and support. They did it immediately Monday morning, first thing when their doors opened. When the handling advocate was not available because she was off that day, they had who handles the homicide cases. She handed it off to somebody else who immediately called me. We spoke on the phone, and we have already put in place supports for trauma counseling, for assistance with funeral expenses. So to the DA's office, thank you. I know many of you as members of the press are here today in order to help understand what happened last week. And I'm not here to answer those questions. The investigation is ongoing. But I think the question we all need to ask ourselves isn't what happened that day or the next day, but why? And what can we do as parents, as community members, as educators, as law enforcement, in order to make a difference, to raise awareness for what's going on? Tangentially, I work in conjunction with a nonprofit called I Can Help. It's an organization that was started by a school teacher that helps promote social media safety. For instance, the director explained to me this morning that Snapchat, TikTok, and Instagram all have access to put parental controls on their phones. And this organization helps educate school resource officers and administrators in helping students have these conversations, so that if a student knows that their friend is engaging in conversation with people online that they shouldn't be, they're not afraid to say something, they know where to go and what to do. I know the family is really concerned about this issue, and they are happy to further engage in conversations about this. But at this time, they have a lot of work that needs to be done to bury their family members. And so we ask all of you for privacy while they get through the next couple of weeks so that they can regroup and then help share their story in doing so. I'm here to answer questions with regard to the family. So after we finish, after you hear from the chief, then I will stick around if anyone has any questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I'd now like to have come up Riverside Police Chief Larry Gonzalez to make a few comments.
Good morning, everybody. Larry Gonzalez, Police Chief here in Riverside. I'll be brief. Most of this was covered wonderfully by Michelle and Allison on some of the things I was going to talk about. But I first of all want to say, on behalf of the entire Riverside Police Department and the entire Riverside community, that our hearts go out to the Winnick family during this time of tremendous grief. And like I said, it's really a tragedy for all of us. Early on in this investigation, our detectives learned that the suspect was, in fact, a law enforcement officer out of the state of Virginia, where he, you heard before, traveled all the way from Virginia to commit this heinous crimes. And just to kind of let you know, when these type of investigations are ongoing, you've heard this a lot from us, that it's still ongoing, it's going to be lengthy. Similar to physical crime scenes like we have at the home, detectives also have a digital crime scene to investigate and comb through evidence that could help us learn more of the details about this online relationship that you heard earlier about, and maybe possibly what some of the intentions he may have had. This is still a very active and extensive investigation that will take time to continue to unravel. We believe the suspect, as you heard before, was engaging on an online enticement called catfishing. It appears that the suspect met the victim online through a common form of enticement called catfishing, where we believe he portrayed himself as a teenager to develop an online relationship with her. Excuse me. This is a broad category of online exploitation that includes sextortion, in which a child is being groomed to take sexually explicit images and or ultimately meet face-to-face with someone for sexual purposes, or to engage in a sexual conversation online, or in some instances sell or trade the child's sexual images. This type of victimization takes place across every platform: social media, messaging apps, gaming platforms, etc. Some of the most common tactics that are used to entice children are engaging in a sexual conversation or role-playing as a grooming method, asking a child for sexually explicit images of themselves or mutually sharing images, develop a rapport through compliments, discussing shared interests or liking their online posts. This is also known as grooming, or sending or offering sexually explicit images of themselves, and also pretending to be younger, which appears to be the case in this investigation. Also offering an incentive, such as a gift card, alcohol, drugs, lodging, transportation, or food. Most importantly, this is yet another horrific reminder of the predators existing online who prey on our children. If you've already had this conversation with your kids on how to be safe online and on social media, please have it again. If not, start it now to better protect them. I don't have anything else, and I think we'll be around. I'll have Ryan come up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, we'll open it up for questions. We have our chief, we have Allison, and for any questions specific, not to this case, but online enticement, I also have Detective Rob Olson from the District Attorney's Riverside County Child Exploitation Team.
As we continue listening in, some viewers here with us are going to be taking a quick 2-minute break as we hear more about this case.
Can Allison address how she's doing right now?
Unfortunately, we don't. She's
Up
in
here.
a.
Microphone, please.
She is in custody. I'm sorry, she's not in custody. She is in placement with Child Protective Services, so we don't have a lot of information on her. We do believe she is getting extensive medical treatment that she needs following these events.
How long did the online relationship go? How long was it ongoing prior to this incident?
Unfortunately, I don't have any of that information.
Do you have that?
Yeah, we're still trying to determine how long this relationship was going online.
Do you have any more specifics about how the contact was made predator did this so that other parents can know what to be aware of?
We don't know exactly the app or if it was a gaming app or whatever it was. This is part of the whole digital investigation that's ongoing, and we still are collecting evidence to try to acquire that knowledge.
Do we know about the image that this catfisher used? Is it an image of a teenager who actually exists?
I'm not aware of an image. From what I understand, he portrayed himself as a 17-year-old. I don't know if that was through an image or through texting or what.
Chief, you were talking about earlier, you were giving the overview of what catfishing was. You included sextortion and other things like that. Are you saying that all of those elements that you described happened in this case?
We believe so, yes.
Okay, and then Allison, quick question for you. Step to the mic, please. My colleague Rob asked you about the current condition of the 15-year-old. But can you, based on your experience, and you talked about your breadth of experience dealing with this kind, what is this young girl looking at in terms of her trauma and her recovery?
Unfortunately, I don't know, but I do know that she's currently undergoing trauma counseling. I don't know what other medical care she's undergoing. She's going to have a long road ahead, and it's going to take years to try to help give her the confidence in order to adjust to the events that transpired. But unfortunately, it's just a wait-and-see situation.
Is there going to be a plan at some point to bring her family into the picture, or her to her family?
I have no knowledge of any. I have no knowledge of that.
I can kind of speak to that. We have full faith in Child Protective Services with Riverside County right now that she is getting the immense and extensive care beginning now, and that will go on for a while. But as you can imagine, there is a process to placement, therapy, all of that. And of course, the family is going to be involved with that. Just those decisions haven't been made yet. And, you know, most likely because her treatment after what she just experienced, just alone 4 deaths that she, you know, was around, that's got to be, you know, traumatizing. This is going to be the most traumatizing event in her life, I'm sure. So her immediate care is of priority, and then CPS is and will be working with the family to figure out what's next. Those steps just haven't happened yet.
Was she coerced, or did she go willingly with the suspect?
We're still trying to determine that. We don't know yet if she was threatened, coerced. We're not describing it as a kidnapping at this point, but we also don't have any reason to believe that she was complicit in any of these murders or the fire as well. But hopefully that will come out through once this digital crime scene, this footprint that all these predators generally leave, and even maybe she has one too that we can try to find out more.
Are there any indications of what his intentions were?
No, we don't know that yet. Again, that's part of this whole digital crime scene that our detectives have to go through. And that's a process just because it involves warrants. It involves a lot of documentation that they have to sort through. So it's very immense depending on what they find. It's not just going through a phone or a device. It's going to where they were having these communications. Once you figure out where, then you got to go to those platforms and get information that hopefully is archived or saved that they'll have access to. But that's going to take quite a long time.
Have you all been in touch with the Virginia agency that Edwards used to work for? Were there any problems that he had there that you can share?
Our detectives have been communicating with them as of Friday. That's when it started. They have been working with them as well over the weekend with some warrants and them helping out with part of this investigation on this side. So that will continue. As of right now, our detectives have not found anything that would lead anybody to believe that something like this would occur. But again, they'll be working with those authorities. And hopefully, again, it goes back to this digital side of things that we'll learn, hopefully, more about him and his history through that.
About catfishing itself, we know that oftentimes these perpetrators don't just target one victim, they'll cast a net, so to speak. Are you working with any other police agencies around the country regarding other potential targets
And that's exactly why we have one of our detectives on a local task force here. But yes, our detectives are working with these other regional task force or federal agencies as well, partly because there is that distance. We can't just walk over to Virginia, so they got to have help on that side. So yes, they are working with that, and so kind of look at it as, in a way, kind of it's one investigation, but a couple different components that we have different teams working on.
Is there any more information?
How just information from the crime scene itself, I mean, how the family was killed. Is it true that their hands were bound behind their backs? Did Edwards, if they were shot, did Edwards use a service weapon? And have you found any other victims of Edwards here or anywhere?
We're not aware of any other victims at this point. Hopefully we won't find any. But it's hard to imagine, I think all law enforcement, if you've been doing it long enough, to think that someone commits an act as horrible and brutal as this, that something didn't lead up to it. So, that, again, may come out through the digital investigation. As to how they were found, we don't want to divulge any too much information right now. A couple reasons. The Riverside County Coroner's Office still is conducting their investigation, and we'll have to do the autopsies, and we want to hear directly from them, okay? Number two, it was very disturbing. And we also want to protect and be very delicate with the family members on how we describe to them and how it's described in the public how their 3 loved ones were found. It is obviously that they were murdered. We do know that. But the coroner's office will be able to tell us more through the exact manner and cause of their death.
Officer,
Can we know if any police resources were used back in Virginia to hunt down this child or used to find her location?
I believe that contact was made with the authorities in Virginia once we found out who he worked for and gathering information. Then our detectives did some fabulous work. Our patrol officers at the scene did fabulous work being able to identify who he was, who he worked for, and then using techniques we're not going to divulge, of course, our detectives were eventually able to track his location, and then we notified San Bernardino County Sheriffs.
Given that her age and the circumstances she described as sextortion, why are you not calling this a kidnapping?
You got to imagine, we have one person who's alive out of this whole ordeal, and the interviews with her will be a process, okay? So detectives have been able to talk to her initially, but we can't overwhelm her with everything as well. We just want to get enough to get us started, to know what we have, what we've been saying so far. They're going to continue talking with her over time, but again, it's a process. So we don't, right now, we can't say, we're not comfortable to say that she was actually kidnapped. Was she coerced? Again, we need to do some more investigating to figure that out.
well, in those initial interviews, then, did you determine whether or not his trip from Virginia was planned, or was it a surprise?
We're still figuring that out. We don't know if this was the first physical encounter they had. It's very possible it was, but we also don't know yet if she knew that he was coming to California. Again, that's where that digital investigation will hopefully uncover that we can figure out what his intentions and plans were. But right now, he's the only one that knows, and we're still trying to figure that out. Maybe the teen is able to provide that in further interviews, but right now we don't have that.
What has she been able to help you with so far?
Say that again, Bray?
What has she been able to help you understand so far about what happened?
To where we're at right now with what the information we put out, that this was this developed on this online enticement form of deception online, and that online relationship. And we do know that there was some exchanging of messages, and from, we don't believe at this point right now that she had anything to do with the murders or knew that they were going to occur.
Has she characterized or summarized these conversations for you?
I wouldn't know that, or not to be specific of that, yeah.
And do you know whether he used a service weapon or police department computer
As to the firearm, right now, there's no reason to believe that he used a firearm to kill the victims. But again, that will be confirmed or not through the coroner's investigation on our end. As to what he used in San Bernardino County when encountered by the deputies, that will have to be determined by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, so we can't speak on that. And then what was the second part?
Was he using a Virginia police computer to have these conversations?
That we don't know, but again, that's where our detectives will work with Virginia authorities to see. And after, if you want to talk to Detective Olson or Opal Singleton, they'll explain that if you took this situation, this predator and a vulnerable teen, this is kind of the classic playbook, I would say, in terms of how they meet online. And how maybe sometimes he was able to have her give him some information. That's generally how it works. That's why they're grooming them to elicit some information from them. But we'll try to figure that out.
What about the teen's sister? What was the teen's sister when the crime happened?
Was not at the location.
Just to be clear, you believe he intentionally set this fire?
Yes, we do believe that this fire was intentionally set. The fire department is still conducting their investigation as to the exact cause and anything they might have used as an accelerant. We just don't have that yet, but yes, we do believe that it was intentionally set after the murders.
So just to be specific, he persuaded her into setting him pictures?
That's what we are suspecting, but again, that digital investigation will hopefully determine that for certain. But that's typically how these predators work.
Have warrants been issued on your end already?
As to the digital side of things, that I'm not aware of. That process is beginning. I don't know where they're at in that process.
Do you know how he knew where she lived?
No, we don't. That could be, again, she could have provided, or he found out somehow. We're still trying to figure that out.
So he posed as a 17-year-old. Is there anything more about the captain, the photos, what developed between them and what name?
Again, we believe he was posing as a teenager, but probably someone under 18. But again, I go back to that's part of that digital investigation that we're still trying to uncover. We have our suspicions, but we need to confirm these first. And so we're not prepared to, we don't have all that information.
From Virginia?
We don't know exactly where. So, yeah, we just don't know yet. It's going to take some time.
Social media platforms or apps, or just one social media?
We don't know yet. But again, the detective can explain how that happens.
And did he say he was a boy?
We believe so. We believe so. Anything else?
When you describe the scene as disturbing, it means that the family tried to resist the attack of this individual?
No, it means that for everyone who was there and responded, including fire, the officers, the detectives, it was disturbing to look at. It was disturbing to find, but it was obvious that they were murdered. We're still trying to figure out what the fire had to do with their deaths as well. And again, once the coroner's investigation is complete, we should be able to have a cause and manner of death. Once the fire department and arson investigators have completed their investigation, we'll be able to know what we suspect started the fire. But finding 3 adult bodies anywhere, but how they were found, where it's obviously they're dead, is disturbing. It's gruesome.
Sir, can I just ask you just a personal question as a member of law enforcement? Obviously, this guy isn't representative of law enforcement in America, but how does that sit with you? What's your view when you think about someone who swore an oath now being accused of this heinous crime?
Yeah, I talked about that quite a bit the last couple of days, and it's disturbing. It's disgusting, really, because we've said this before, anybody in the law enforcement community, we hate that person more than anybody because it's a reflection on us. We realize things in law enforcement happen. If it happens in New York, it'll affect us in Riverside and vice versa. So when we see somebody, we ask the same questions you all ask. How did this person get past the background investigation? How did this person get past the polygraph investigation? You know, but from what we understand so far about him, there's really not a big rap sheet on this person or anything that would indicate that they could see that outcome.
Can you talk about, did she ever mention to anybody that she had engaged in a relationship with somebody online and she thought she was in a romantic relationship? Did the teenager tell anybody this at all? And, yeah, we can talk about it.
At this point, we don't have that information from her. That'll come with not just the digital evidence, but also the interview process as well.
Chief, to my colleague's question about how you feel with being in the law enforcement community, how does something like this change your approach to vetting officers moving forward? Do things like this, lessons learned, apply?
Well, sure. We'll have to look into more to see what happened in Virginia, but I think the standards that we go by here in Riverside through Peace Officer Standards and Training, it's an extensive background. You've heard a lot of police agencies talk about just recruitment and retention woes that we're all having, trying to get people hired. So that's an ongoing battle for us to get people hired, but the one thing that we were not going to do is lower our standards. So we're always going to have them go through a lengthy background process, check references, check their personal history statements, go through a psychological exam, go through a polygraph exam, like I said earlier, and make sure they're vetted. I think we have a good system in place right now, and I can't really speak to what this system is in Virginia to say what's different about what we do here and what they do there.
That suspect, again, was a law enforcement officer from North Chesterfield, Virginia. So that's what they're speaking to. Some viewers here with us on Live Now from Fox going to go out to a 2-minute break.
And I hate to keep referring to that. We have said we'll have to look at the digital evidence. It was obviously more than a week or so for him to get to this point. Common sense would tell you that, but we just don't have an exact number to put out yet.
Neighbors have said that the car might have been spotted on the street before that morning. Do we have some indication of how long the suspect was there? Was he waiting around for the family? Had he had prior contact with them?
I don't know for exactly how long. I know that the neighbor, and I think Michelle said that in her statement, she is a hero for see something, say something that we say all the time. Got a plate for us, and we were able to do some really good police work. Like we said, we're very proud of this department and the other agencies. And I talk about this department, I'm just not talking about police officers that are chasing bad guys, talking about dispatchers that are doing up work, forensic techs that come out to the scene, crime analysts that are with us the entire way through this investigation to eventually get a lead on the plate, and we were able to spot it in the San Bernardino County area where we were able to track them, and then ultimately San Bernardino took over.
When was that plate reported to you in relation to the fire?
I don't know for sure if it was before or after. I thought it was after the fact.
The polygraph tests for officer candidates, are they pretty standard? I'm wondering what sorts of questions would be asked where in this case the guy could somehow fit his way around being a creep.
Yeah, well, you guys have all watched enough CSI episodes and crime shows to know that a sociopath can defeat a polygraph. The first answer to your question is it's not standard. There are some agencies that don't require a polygraph. The second answer is a polygraph is usually a lengthy examination where they fill out a large packet. It's usually a 3 or 4 hour process where they'll sit down with the polygraph investigator, go through all the questions, and then when they've had this lengthy interview, they will go on the polygraph machine itself. And it's not, hey, what color was your first car? It's other than what we've talked about in this particular area, sexual crimes, are you being truthful with me? Yes or no? So it's a series of yes or no questions after a lengthy interview. But yeah, it can be defeated. That's just one process. I would look more towards a psych exam than a polygraph as far as something.
Riverside, do you employ any sort of investigation into a candidate's digital footprint or looking into their social media when considering hiring?
Yes, we do.
For Allison or anyone else, can you tell us more about this 15-year-old? A lot of parents wonder, how could this happen? Can you tell us more about her and her personality?
Unfortunately, I don't have much information. It's something that I've avoided asking about, given the circumstances.
This will conclude our press conference. We thank you all for coming.